Here's a story for you while you're waiting in the airport. You would expect to start most stories in the beginning. Unfortunately, or not, you can't tell the story until you get to the end. When you arrive at the end, the beginning is something different than when the beginning was happening. Then there's the middle. That's the tough one, the middle. The middle is where the beginning ends. It tells the story of how the end comes about from the beginning. It's funny how the middle works that way. What if we tell a story that starts at the beginning of that story, but slides through the middle and end of other stories? It would make one big story intertwined with all the other stories. It is the whole of the story that matters, undoubtedly, but this is undeniably not one of those stories. The end of the story starts today. I can't go any further until today becomes tomorrow. We can look back with hindsight and see clearly, sort of, what happened. Then we can make sense of it all. Rationality, that's the name of the game. What is rational in any situation may not be rational in another. This seems perfectly rational when my little world thoughtlessly came crashing down around my head. I moved out of my house, leave the job I hated, and face the world alone. The truth is, I got evicted for being a pain in the ass. I lost my other job for being a pain in the ass. And my girlfriend dumped me, yes, for being a pain in the ass. She dumped me for her poker partner because I was a pain in the ass. You can see a pattern starting to evolve here. I don't think I'm a pain in the ass. I guess it takes time, like anything else, to be a pain in the ass. Sitting in my small apartment staring at this cursor blink, I realize that I am the end of my story. Each moment of presence might be the last moment of existence. That's why we call it the future, the time between now and when we die. That's comforting. It is why I decided to write this story, because my story is the only story that I have. My story doesn't start at 46 when this story took place. My story, like many others, followed the prescribed path: born, raised, lived, died, and repeat repeatedly. Each time gathering more force from and propelling further into the universal story. Billions of years of stories lived and told and forgotten to be lived again and again. The story of the workman who goes to work. The story of the family man who has a family. The story of the walker who loves to walk but spends more time sitting than walking. I guess that would make him a sitter. Sitting, being fed by that shining light that shows us the way we need to be. What is righteous from an armchair? A man slouched in front of a glowing orb, thumb resting compulsively on the next button. Each channel a new day for the same reruns that run again and again and again until they are new for someone, and then repeat. That was me. Well, that is me today. That's who I was when this story began. At 46, I was horribly sober. I lived alone in an overpriced garden-level apartment. All this for $1,000 a month and a side entrance to the building. I had helped my friends buy the place a month earlier. They had a nice basement. I needed a place to live. We made an arrangement. I wouldn't bother them. They wouldn't bother me. Harmony, they say. Keeping the peace through the status quo. We will find out later that apparently I have issues with the status quo. I was a real estate agent at that time. To make extra money, I also worked as a used car lot selling dreams to suckers. I'd say, oh yeah, I'd say, this baby will run another 30,000 miles. I goddamn guarantee it. The other guys were good at this. I just needed a job until I could close some real estate deals and get right with the house. Get the obese debt off my back and move forward, and maybe for once I could find that place in myself that can be satisfied living the status quo of comfort and grace. Before that, I was living with my girlfriend. It seemed like the best thing to do. Before that, I was squatting in one of my for sale listings. The house was under contract for 44 days, so I stayed for 43. The owner lived out of state. The buyers weren't allowed in unless they set an appointment. The 16 blue plastic tubs and a broken brass lamp that I found in a dumpster and a pile of other crap that had been carried around were neatly scattered in the garage. The buyers assumed it was the owner's and would be moved before closing. I was slowly moving my stuff into a storage locker in town, but I didn't want to sleep in it. That was basically my life. Moving from one situation to another, coasting and never really digging in anywhere. They say the wages of sin is death. Everything costs something. Death might be the easiest way to pay. The sun was hot. It is rarely cold. I find myself out on the trail. The other walkers walk past in front or behind. We all seem to walk at our own pace, which varies day to day and minute by minute. It is all one line, it is all one long line of seekers, adventurers, clarifiers, but mostly the spiritually unemployed. I look to my right and smile at the woman with the big backpack. It's said we carry our troubles and our worries in our backpack, trudging through life. Some are brand new. We all want to put down that sack and walk free, but once it has been lifted, it leaves a void and a dizzying lightness. That's why we're all here, trying to fill the void left by the comfort of knowing our troubles. It is all new, even my body feels new. It is not, and quite the contrary, I'm in horrible shape. Instead of spending 2 months on the trail, I should be in a rehab center facing my demons, the guided search to find oneself by scribbling in notebooks and sharing during the talking stick. Am I going to fill the void where the demons sat? What are my demons? We would ask ourselves while staring into another tray of industrialized nutrition. I'd rather be munching on the granola of my soul than to accept my tranquility. My little world then was much like it is now, except in that tomorrow I was getting on a plane to a faraway land to wander in the hills with nymphs and winos. I had my satchel carefully packed, everything neatly wrapped and rolled into one nice ball, then stuffed into my new backpack. I had taken it out a few days earlier and rolled around in the dirt with it on, so at least it would look a little used. I was an old hand at this kind of thing, but no one wanted to be the new kid. At least I didn't. I'm the old guy now, the one with the old gear that has seen many a journey between the wreck boutique and here. I remember when I first started traveling, I was young then and ready to see the world. Everything was fresh. We warmed ourselves on the rotting decay of each minute, our past warm in our memory, my face crisp in the chill of the oncoming future. It was the world of black and white and red all over again. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we knew something was happening, and if we just sat at this bar long enough, something would come along and wow our minds. We did a lot of sitting. I like to use that word we a lot. It's less lonely, and they get to take some of the responsibility for my actions. Mostly I traveled alone, but there were times when I did have a travel partner, girlfriend, whatever. The new, existing, or soon-to-be ex-girlfriend was the way it usually went. A long line of short, intense relationships to punctuate the long sine wave of wandering. We would be in love or just scratching and crawling through a haze of lust and wine. The fog of it crawling over the hills, into the valleys, obscuring the signs, graying the stones on the cliffs. It seemed we could fly over the meadows and look down without fear because we had each other and we knew no fear. That's what love is about sometimes. Love is also about the hard landing. It never stops hurting, but after a while, I learned to land on somebody else to break the fall. I arrived yesterday in the afternoon, early evening. The stores were closed, but when my taxi stopped in front of the train station, the driver smiled with most of his teeth and pointed to the square and said, "Camino, camino." He shook my hand as I got out of the cab. "Suerte, suerte." I took that as a good omen, slung my pack chin forward, and walked into the square. The hours of traveling began to take hold, and I sat down on a bench and organized my bag yet again. It is a nervous habit when I'm on the road. I think it gives me a sense of control, or of at least a few things, and at this moment I needed to feel control of something. I looked around the square and first saw the moving and breathing nylon organism that lay before me, pushing and pulling, excusing itself in different languages. "Pardon me, please. Excuse me. Thank you," the Brits would say as they stutter-stepped behind you, politely flashing their high beams to get by. There were people everywhere waiting to start their trek, some clutching the unknown journey's guidebook, others sitting in the square watching and waiting for someone to come over and wow their minds. Everything here was fresh, or at least unsullied in the shine of the moment. I hoisted my pack and threaded my way through the crowd, surreptitiously sneaking a glance at the restaurant, the menu boards, and eyeballing the animated mannequin that sat in the chairs, ate the food, and stared back at me. Nothing seemed real. I knew I was real, but the rest of it waxen and bright, as if I could put my hand through the scrim and pull it away. The stone streets had seen thousands of years of people. Each step walked like a breeze over the cobblestones, eroding the stones. The building threshold seemed to sag under the invisible weight of time. Echoes rang off of the hardness. The clinking of metal sticks and the excited chattering welded together with the normal sounds of the town. A taxi slowly winding its way through the clueless crowd, honking its horn. The drumming of a busboy racking the bread crates against the wall before lighting a cigarette to watch the girls. My boots silently splashing through the puddles from the afternoon rains. All these sounds came together and split apart and came together and split apart until it stopped the pendulum swing and just became sound. The sound of a small town bulging with tourists and pilgrims. The sound of something new over something old. The sound of my stomach grumbling and my will crumbling. I had to find a hostel. A hostel. I'm 45 years old. I haven't stayed in a hostel since, well, a long time, and I remember then it wasn't very much fun. I didn't know what to do. I sat on the bench as the sun made peaked shadows on the walls. It was time to find a bed and a bar. The street was crowded with other pilgrims. They all seemed to be intent on their task for the moment. Some were chatting excitedly, others stood in the street, map in hand, and wondered why they were there. I knew I was there. It was better than rehab, so I figured I'd make the best of it. Walking through the streets, dodging over stuff and backpacks, I crested a small hill, my heart racing as I tried to look interested in the ordinary arched doorway in front of me while I gasped for breath. I needed a place to put down my bag and finally come to rest. It had been 20 hours of airports and engine wine. My economy basic cattle ticket had me in seat 33F, right next to the chatty guy from Denver who was heading to Portugal to meet his new girlfriend. They were going to be married in Spain. You can take the Midwest out of the boy, but you can't take the boy out of the Midwest. And that's chapter one. Have fun in the airport. Okay. Yes, I want to do that. Yes, I want to do that. We're going to get rid of that. Bye.